There's a fighter jet that most defense analysts have spent 2 decades dismissing. It's been called cute, modest, a budget option, a patrol aircraft for small countries that can't afford real air power. Critics love to compare it to bringing a knife to a gunfight. Then, in 2006, something happened that should have ended that narrative forever. Red Flag, Alaska, the most advanced aerial combat exercise on Earth, run by the United States Air Force, designed to push pilots and aircraft to their absolute limits under conditions that simulate real combat. Sweden brought its Gripen fighters to Red Flag and was assigned to the Red Team, the adversary, the bad guys, the ones expected to lose. The opposing force included American F-16 Block 50s, Eurofighter Typhoons, and F-15C Eagles, some of the most capable combat aircraft ever built, flown by some of the best trained pilots on the planet. On the very first day, Swedish Gripen pilots reportedly scored 10 air-to-air kills, without a single loss. Those kills included 1 Eurofighter Typhoon and 5 F-16 Block 50s. In one close-range engagement, a single Gripen pilot took down 5 F-16s alone. The numbers came from Swedish sources. The U.S. Air Force never officially confirmed them. But here's what we know for certain. The Gripen was invited back. And today we're talking about the most underestimated combat aircraft of the 21st century. The Saab JS-39 Gripen, the jet that quietly embarrassed NATO's finest, then joined NATO and started flying real combat missions within 24 hours of accession. And we're talking about why Canada, locked in a trade war with the United States, staring down an increasingly unpredictable partner, and facing a $19 billion decision on its future fighter fleet, is seriously considering walking away from the F-35 and building Gripen in Canada instead. This isn't just a procurement story. This is a story about sovereignty, about whether a country should hand its national defense to a partner that has repeatedly proven that partnership comes with conditions. And it's a story about a small neutral nation that built a fighter jet so efficient, so reliable, and so strategically clever that it just might upend the most expensive defense program in human history. Let's start with the perception problem. On paper, the Gripen is easy to dismiss. Single engine, twin engine fighters are sexier, less internal fuel, smaller payload, designed around efficiency and low operating costs, not raw power. Defense analysts spent years reducing it to a budget option. A lightweight solution for countries that couldn't afford the top-tier platforms. The F-15 Eagle, air dominance machine, unmatched combat record. The F-16 Fighting Falcon, decades of real-world experience. Kills over Iraq, over Serbia, over Afghanistan. The Eurofighter Typhoon, Europe's Cold War masterpiece, engineered specifically to counter advanced Soviet aircraft and, not coincidentally, to outperform the Gripen. Against that backdrop, Sweden's fighter looked modest, even restrained. And here's the thing that really shaped the perception. Sweden wasn't NATO. It hadn't fought a major war in generations. No combat footage, no dramatic headlines, no powerful alliance pushing the aircraft onto the global stage. The Gripen was built for a country with limited resources, vast territory, and a defensive mindset shaped by 200 years of neutrality. Analysts drew a simple conclusion. This is an aircraft for guarding airspace, not for taking the fight to anyone else. That assumption felt logical. It was widely accepted, and it was completely wrong. Red Flag exists to strip away assumptions. Complex scenarios, heavy electronic warfare, restricted support, constant pressure. The goal isn't comfort, it's survival and effectiveness. In 2006, Sweden brought the Gripen into that arena. Here's what the opposition didn't know. Instead of relying on traditional airborne early warning systems, the Gripen formation used something else, a data link network. One aircraft would briefly activate its radar, collect situational data, and pass that information instantly to the rest of the group. The remaining aircraft stayed electronically silent. No emissions, no radar pings, no detection. They maintained a complete picture of the battle space while the enemy had no idea where they were. This approach turned a perceived weakness, smaller size, less internal fuel, lower radar cross-section, into a decisive advantage. According to a former Swedish flight test engineer, the results on the first day were startling. 10 air-to-air kills, 0 losses. One Gripen pilot, 5 F-16s, alone. The F-16 is no slouch. It's one of the most successful combat aircraft in history. It has killed enemies in real wars, not just exercises. And a single Gripen pilot killed 5 of them in one engagement. Beyond the kill ratios, there was another number that mattered. The Gripen was the only aircraft at red flag that completed every planned sortie across all weather conditions during the entire exercise. Not the F-16, not the Typhoon, not the Eagle, the Gripen. Skeptics fairly pointed out that these figures came from Swedish sources. Exercises can be shaped by rules, scenarios, reporting biases. Then Norway provided independent confirmation. 3 Swedish Gripens faced 5 F-16s from the Royal Norwegian Air Force. Norwegian pilots trained to NATO standards, flying the same aircraft used by dozens of nations. First round, Gripen wins decisively. Second round, same result. Third round, 5-1, Norway scoring a single kill. These results were publicly recorded by a NATO ally. Not marketing material, not Swedish propaganda. A NATO Air Force flying American jets got consistently outperformed by a non-NATO country, flying a budget fighter. That should have been the moment everything changed. But skepticism lingered. Exercises are controlled environments. Real operations introduce uncertainty, politics, and consequences that simulations can't capture. That question remained unresolved until Sweden joined NATO, March 2024. After more than 2 centuries of official neutrality, Sweden became the 32nd member of the NATO alliance. The transition was not ceremonial. Less than 24 hours after accession, Swedish Gripens flew their first missions under NATO command. March 11th morning, Swedish Gripens and Belgian F-16s intercepted a Russian Il-38 maritime patrol aircraft, flying without a flight plan over the Baltic Sea. March 11th, afternoon. Swedish Gripens and German Eurofighters intercepted a Russian An-26 transport aircraft. There was no extended integration period. No gradual easing into alliance operations. No training wheels phase. The Gripen coordinated seamlessly with Allied aircraft and NATO command systems. It operated as if the partnership had existed for years. April 2025. Gripens deployed to Poland as part of NATO's enhanced air policing mission. Operating alongside British Eurofighter Typhoons, Swedish pilots carried out regular intercepts of Russian aircraft approaching or violating Allied airspace. These were not training events. Real aircraft. Real geopolitical tension. Real consequences. In that environment, the Gripen demonstrated something that doesn't show up on performance charts: consistency. It didn't draw attention through spectacle. It earned respect through reliability, through mission completion, through showing up every day and doing exactly what it was designed to do. This operational record reshaped the conversation, especially for countries weighing long-term defense decisions, especially for Canada. Let's talk about where Canada is right now. Ottawa signed a contract to purchase 88 F-35As from Lockheed Martin. 16 have already been delivered. The plan promised advanced stealth, deep strike capability, and tight integration with United States forces. Then the political ground shifted. Donald Trump returned to the White House. Tariffs on Canadian goods. Threats to the aerospace sector. The ambassador in Ottawa publicly saying, "We don't need Canada." And a quiet question began surfacing in defense planning documents, in parliamentary committee hearings, in conversations that used to be unthinkable. What happens if the partner you've trusted with your national defense becomes the very risk you need to hedge against? Enter Saab. Sweden's defense prime contractor walked into Ottawa with a proposal that few defense deals ever offer: a full production line in Canada. Not final assembly, not kit assembly, full production. 72 Gripens, 6 Global Eye airborne early warning and control aircraft, the most advanced AEW&C platform in operation today, developed in partnership with Canada's own Bombardier. The economic impact: an estimated 12,600 jobs, 9,000 tied to Gripen production, 3,600 tied to Global Eye development and sustainment. The technology transfer: full access to source code. Canada would control its own upgrades, its own modifications, its own integration pathways. It would not need to request permission from Washington to modify its own fighter fleet. The supply chains: domestic. Brazil pursued this model. Brazilian engineers trained in Sweden. Brazilian suppliers entered the production chain. A technology ecosystem grew around the program. Today, Brazil is not just operating Gripens, it's contributing to the global supply chain and exploring export opportunities. Ukraine has signed a letter of intent to purchase between 100 and 150 Gripens. France and Germany have expressed serious interest in the Global Eye platform. If production were based in Canada, Ottawa wouldn't just be buying fighters. Ottawa would become an exporter, generating long-term economic returns instead of sustaining perpetual imports, building a sovereign aerospace capability instead of remaining permanently dependent. Let's talk about money. In 2012, IHS Janes Aerospace and Defense Consulting published a comprehensive study on fighter operating costs. The Gripen CD approximately $4,700 per flight hour. F-16 Block, $40,50. Roughly 49% higher. FA-18 Super Hornet, $11,000 to $24,000. Rafale 6,500. Eurofighter Typhoon, $18,000. F-35A estimates range from $21,000 to over $31,000 per hour based on data from the Royal Australian Air Force and the U.S. Navy. More recent figures from Saab place the Gripen EF at approximately $2,100 per hour, including fuel, maintenance, personnel, and logistics. F-35A over $46,000 per hour. Different accounting methods produce different totals, but across every methodology, the same conclusion appears. The Gripen is the lowest cost modern fighter to operate. Now, cost isn't everything. Capability matters, stealth matters, interoperability matters. But here's the question Canada is now asking. If the F-35 costs twice as much to operate, requires constant American approval for upgrades, and comes from a partner that has spent the last 2 years threatening your economy and insulting your sovereignty, what exactly are you paying the premium for? And then came the pressure. Pete Hoekstra, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, the same man who told the world, "We don't need Canada," issued a public warning. Walking away from the F-35, he suggested, could put NORAD cooperation at risk. The message was subtle but unmistakable. This decision carries political weight. This decision tests alliance loyalty. This decision has consequences. Pressure followed through trade channels, through diplomatic signaling, through the quiet machinery of alliance management that Washington has spent 75 years perfecting. But here's what the ambassador didn't account for. He was threatening a country that had just watched its closest partner call its soldiers' sacrifices irrelevant. He was warning a government that had just signed trade deals with China, opened LNG terminals to Asia, rerouted aluminum exports to Europe, and watched its vice president get booed by 65,000 people at the Olympics. The old playbook, threaten, pressure, demand loyalty, was written for a different era, an era when Canada had no alternatives. That era is over. So where does this leave Canada? The F-35 is an extraordinary machine. Stealth, sensor fusion, networked warfare. It represents the absolute pinnacle of American aerospace engineering, but it also represents something else. Dependency. You don't buy an F-35. You subscribe to it. The logistics system, the software updates, the weapons integration, the cryptographic keys, all of it flows through Washington. The Gripen offers a different proposition. Not superiority in every performance metric. Not the absolute cutting edge of stealth technology. Something rarer. Control. Canada would own its aircraft. It would control its upgrades. It would build its fighters in Canadian factories, employing Canadian workers, generating Canadian intellectual property. It would operate a fleet designed for the mission Canada actually has, defending the largest airspace of any NATO nation, patrolling 3 coastlines, conducting Arctic sovereignty operations, rather than a fleet designed for the missions America imagines. This is not a simple choice. Former Royal Canadian Air Force commanders disagree publicly. Defense analysts trade arguments about radar, cross-sections, and thrust-to-weight ratios. But beneath the technical debate, a deeper question is being decided. What does it mean to be a sovereign nation in an era when your closest ally has become your greatest strategic uncertainty? Sweden answered that question by building a fighter jet that could defend its territory, operate independently, and still integrate seamlessly with allies when needed. Canada is now asking whether it should do the same. The Gripen has been underestimated for 2 decades. Underestimated at red flag, until it scored 10 kills without a loss. Underestimated by Norway, until Norwegian F-16 pilots couldn't beat it. Underestimated by the defense establishment, until it joined NATO and started flying combat missions within 24 hours. And now, perhaps, underestimated by Washington. Because the F-35 is not just a fighter jet. It's a tool of alliance management. It locks customers into a permanent relationship with the United States Defense Industrial Base. It ensures that no matter what political disputes arise, the operational dependency remains. That was the genius of the program. Not just the stealth, not just the sensors, the lock-in, but lock-in only works when the partner at the center of the system is trusted. And that trust is gone. Canada may still buy the F-35. The contract is signed. The first aircraft are delivered. The diplomatic cost of cancellation is real. But the hedging has already begun. The conversations with Saab, the technology transfer demands, the quiet exploration of alternatives. And if Canada walks away, if it becomes the first Tier 3 partner to cancel its F-35 order and build Gripens in Ontario, the signal will be received by every other F-35 customer in the world. If Canada can leave, why can't we? That's the question Washington should be terrified of, not whether Canada buys 88 F-35s or 72 Gripens. Whether the alliance system the United States spent 75 years building is now so brittle that one country's procurement decision could crack it. The Gripen didn't cause this crisis. It's just the aircraft that happens to be standing there, ready, efficient, sovereign, when a longtime ally finally decided it needed an alternative. And that, more than any kill ratio or operating cost, is why this moment matters. What do you think? Should Canada walk away from the F-35 and build Gripens at home? Is sovereignty worth trading stealth for? And if Canada does cancel, how many other nations will follow? Let me know in the comments. If you want to track these geopolitical and defense shifts before they become headlines, hit subscribe and ring the bell. We're watching the signals the rest of the world misses.